In this video, we complete the content portion of our page by working on the About Me Lightning Web component. For the About Me section, we won't steal anything from W3 Schools this time. It's a simple enough component that we'll just write it from scratch and watch the styling update in real time in the LWC local server. So let's start off by just creating a new Lightning Web component. And we're going to call this About Me. Okay, and just to get out of the way, we know we're going to add this as a root. We're going to add this directly onto our Experience Builder website. So let's go ahead and change the metadata. Let's grab the metadata from the hero. So we'll just copy all of this and put it into our About Me. Just need to change the is exposed to true and set the targets. Okay. Once that's done, we can start adding some HTML elements. So in here, get rid of my sidebar. Well, let's go ahead and open up the local dev server so we can watch our changes. Okay, here we are side by side. So the first thing, we'll just give it a title to say About Me, because we know that will be at the top. So we'll do an H1, About Me. There on the left side, we get an About Me. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room in Visual Studio Code here. There we go. We generally want to design for the smaller screen sizes first anyway, so scooting this over a little bit is probably better. Okay, so now we have an H1. The next thing we're going to want to do is have an image of yourself or the person we're making the site for. Earlier, we created a static resource with an About Me image, so we already have the image loaded into our org and available to us. So let's go ahead and create an image tag here. And we don't need the alt text. We do need a URL for the source. So we're going to later create, well, right after this, we're going to create a JavaScript variable that holds the Salesforce URL to the static resource. So we're going to call this About Me image URL. And then we will go into the About Me JavaScript. And I'm also going to steal this code from the hero section because we are pulling an image out of the same static resource. So we can grab this line, this import images line, and add to the top of our About Me JavaScript. So now we have, this is getting a little cramped. How about let's do this without the preview for right now. So right now we want to assign the image URL. So we have the About Me image URL variable to images plus the name of the file. And in our case, the name of the file we want to use is this about-me.png. So about-me.png. Great. So now let's go look at our preview, which is still updating. And sure enough, we grab that image out of the static resource and put it into our HTML image element. So we're off and running. The next thing we're going to want in our About Me section are a couple of paragraphs underneath the image. So let's go back to our About Me HTML, and let's add 2 paragraphs. One paragraph, let's give it some lorem ipsum text. Let's say 100 characters. And our second paragraph, let's just give it 75. Oh, and this syntax, if you don't know, is the Emmet syntax. It's saying create a paragraph, and inside that paragraph, that's what this arrow symbol means. Inside that paragraph, generate lorem of 70 characters. And when I hit enter, it creates a paragraph element with 70 characters of lorem inside of it. So when I save that, I should get a couple of paragraphs underneath my image. And sure enough, there's our text. So in this case, we want to style this. This doesn't look that great so far. It's just the raw elements that we have in here. So we need to go and create a CSS file for our new component. So let's create new file and aboutme.css. And in our CSS, let's take care of the header first. So let's do an H1 selector. And let's center the text. So we'll say text, align center. And then let's make it larger. I believe in previous components we've been using 48 pixels as the size for these headers. So let's say font size 48 pixels. And that's maybe a little big for mobile, but we'll keep it that way. That's fine. Okay. The next thing, this image is a little boring with no border or anything. So let's go ahead and steal the border CSS from the hero section we created earlier. So we have a border radius of 7 pixels and a 2 pixel border. It's pretty simple, but just makes it look a little bit nicer. So let's add that to the image. Okay, that looks a little better. And if we scroll down here, it looks like our paragraphs are kind of butting up against our image a little bit. Doesn't look that great. So let's go back to our HTML. And what I want to do here is I want to put a container around our text so that we can style the whole block rather than just the paragraphs themselves. So let's go ahead and call this text container. And let's put both of these paragraphs inside of it. And then in our CSS file, we will use that text container to style just the text section. So in this case, let's give it a little bit of margin. Let's just say, I don't know, let's do 10 pixels for right now. Should give it margin on all sides. Okay, that looks a little nicer. The other thing that stands out to me is that we have two separate paragraphs, but they all kind of run together. There's no space between the paragraphs. So our second paragraph starts right here, but you can't really tell. So we could do this in CSS by selecting the paragraph and putting margin or something there. But I think in this case, the simplest thing to do is just to add a break between the two paragraph elements in HTML. So if we just go between these two paragraphs and do a break, BR, and save that, we should see a line between the two paragraphs. And there we go. So that looks pretty good. Okay, that's not looking too bad. So let's go ahead and let's deploy this to our Scratch org and add it to our portfolio site. So we'll say SF project deploy start. Okay, so we're deployed. Let's see, I believe I have an experience site open, the builder open to this org. So let's refresh our experience builder. Open up components to find our new custom component. There's our About Me. Let's scroll down to under skills. Let's just drag the About Me section. Not sure if it went there or not. Let's try it one more time. Hopefully we don't drag doubles. Okay, there we go. Okay, so for this screen size, this image is outrageously large, but it is there and it looks pretty okay. So for a smaller screen size, it's going to look more or less okay. All right, so that's great. Now let's work on styling it with our preview so we get some more responsive behavior. This image is gigantic. So basically what we want to do is make the image smaller for bigger screen sizes, and then also put the text up in another column. So split it into 2 columns, kind of like we did into 3 columns for the skills section, and the 2 columns we did for the hero. So the same thing applies. Let's go get our media query breakpoints. And let's just grab the same breakpoint we've been using for the other sections, which is the medium device width. So we'll grab that. Back to Visual Studio Code, find our About Me CSS. Give ourselves some space here. And let's open up our preview window so we can see what's going on. Okay. So I'll paste the media query in here. So this CSS will only apply for screen widths bigger including and larger than 678 pixels. So what we want to do in that case is put 2 components side by side in a container. But right now, if you look at our About Me HTML, we don't have a container that contains both of our image element and our text container. So we need to create another container out here. So we'll create a div with a class container, and we'll put both of our elements inside. Both of the elements we want to display equally. Put them inside there, which will have no effect on the actual layout, I don't believe. Nope, everything still stays the same. We'll go back to our CSS, and in our CSS, we will style let's give ourselves a little bit of space here. We will style the outer container. We'll give that a display flex and save that. I don't think this screen's quite big enough to make it pop. Okay. So that doesn't do anything because both of our elements are 100% of the width. So we need to make the sub elements, we need to give them width limits so that we end up having 2 columns. So what we'll do is take our previously created text container, and we will give it a min width of 40 characters. I've read that you really don't want a text line smaller than 40 characters. We'll give it a max width of 70 characters. Okay, well, one thing I've learned is that life with images in Flexbox is much easier if you put your images in a container div. So let's do that and see if we can get this image to resize appropriately and flip up on the Flexbox. So let's say I'm going to call this image container. Create a div with class image container and put our image element inside of it. And I don't believe that'll change our situation if we maximize this. Oh no, there we go. So now that it's in an image container, it knows to put the 2 elements side by side. So it resizes the image to fit with the min and max sizes of the text over here. Oh, it gets pretty big before it flips over though. I think we might want to change to a 2-column layout earlier than 768 pixels. That looks a little funny. So let's go ahead and change this. Let's look at our other breakpoints here on W3. Let's move up to the 992 breakpoint. Okay. Okay, that looks good. That's fine. Oh, it gets pretty big. Oh, wow, that's pretty huge. Okay, so I don't like that solution either. Let's try... Oh, maybe I was going the wrong direction. Let's try the smaller one. Let's try the 600 pixels. Looks good. Okay, so that's fine, that's fine. Oh, it's getting pretty big, but then the picture gets pretty small. So maybe we should stick a min width on the picture and see what happens. So let's say we don't want our image to ever be smaller than let's say min width. Well, let's not do that. Let's do it on the container. That's why we have the container, right? So we'll say, and it's usually only when we have the side-by-side layout we're having a problem. So we'll say image container min width 25%. Seems a little bit better. I also think we need more of a margin here between the two items. So let's go ahead and fix that. There are a couple of things we could do here. We could either add margin, side margin to the text, or we could use the gap of the flexbox layout. So let's do the gap first, and then I'll show you the other option. So we can say gap, and let's say 10 pixel gap. So that gave us a little bit of a gap here. So yeah, it looks okay. And snaps. Yeah, I think it looks all right. Good enough for rock and roll, as they say. Okay. So that's the About Me section. Let's go ahead and deploy that and see how it looks in our overall site. Let's see here. Okay, project deploy start. Okay, let's go back to our experience builder, refresh. And there's the About Me section, looking a lot nicer than it did before. Okay, so it's reasonably responsive. Okay, so one thing I don't believe I've done on these videos yet is show you how to make the layout part of your source control. So we added the About Me section using the Experience Builder. We didn't deploy it like that from our Visual Studio Code. So when you create a new Scratch org and you deploy your Experience Builder site, if we were to do that right now from our code, we would not have an About Me section on this homepage. So the way we deal with that is once we've added the About Me section, we go back into Visual Studio Code and we say SF project retrieve, I before E, retrieve preview. So I can show you what files it'll pull down when we actually run the command. And it will pull down the file that represents the home page, which will include the new reference to the About Me Lightning Web component that we just added. So let's go ahead and run the actual, oops, I think I just hit a button, fat fingered it. Let's go ahead and just run SF project retrieve start. Then once we have this retrieved, we now have all of the main components of our home page added. So I will go ahead and just push all of this stuff up to the GitHub repo. So I will say added About Me section to homepage. And then we'll go ahead and commit and push. Now that our content components are complete, we will create this responsive navbar component at the top of the page to navigate among our content sections.